He called my life's work an unfeasible financial fantasy in front of the entire architectural world. One minute, the Crystal Award for Building of the Year felt heavy in my hands, a testament to 5 years of sleepless nights. The next, Julian Croft, our newly minted Director of Innovation, used his acceptance speech to turn my triumph into a punchline. What he didn't know was that the very building he was accepting an award for was running on an operating system I had built from scratch, a silent, invisible nervous system that kept it breathing, thinking, and alive. And the plan I was about to set in motion would make the CEO, his uncle, wish they had never erased my name from the blueprints. I wasn't here for an apology. I was here to prove that underestimating the architect is the first fatal error in any design. My name is Eliana Sherman, and I've spent the last decade building the soul of Ethelgard Design's most celebrated structures. At 30, I had already designed the bioadaptive climate system for the Oasis Tower, a project that had just put our firm on the global map. But tonight, at the Metropolis Architecture Awards Gala in the heart of New York City, none of that seemed to matter. The champagne was flowing, the city skyline glittered through the floor-to-ceiling windows, and Julian Croft was holding court by the stage. As the CEO's nephew, he commanded attention not through competence, but through proximity to power. His Tom Ford tuxedo probably cost more than my entire software budget for the first year, and he wore it like a shield. A reporter from Architectural Digest approached him, microphone extended. "Mr. Croft, a stunning achievement with the Oasis Tower. What's next for Ethelgard Designs? I should have known better." The gleam in his eyes wasn't ambition. It was predatory. He gestured vaguely in my direction. "Well, you'd have to ask my team. Eliana here is one of our most diligent detailers, fantastic at making the big picture come to life." The polite smiles from the surrounding press felt like needles. I kept my expression a mask of professional neutrality. I am the lead systems architect. I designed the Oragrid operating system that runs the tower. Right, Julian's smile widened, a practiced, camera-ready flash of white. Eliana has these grand ideas. We're working on something she calls Project Chimera, a fully autonomous, self-sustaining building. Adorable, isn't it? Especially for someone who came to us straight from a state university. My fingers tightened around the stem of my champagne flute. He'd done his homework, found out about my scholarship, my non-Ivy League background, the 2 part-time jobs I'd worked to pay for my degree. I mean, it's inspiring, really, he continued, playing to his audience. To see that kind of raw ambition. Of course, a project of that scale, the journalist leaned in, intrigued. "What kind of scale?" Julian laughed, a dismissive, airy sound. "Let's just say it's an unfeasible financial fantasy. Beautiful dream, but one that doesn't quite align with the realities of structural engineering and, well, gravity." The laughter that followed was quiet but sharp. He had just taken my 5-year research project, my magnum opus, and dismissed it as a child's drawing. His uncle, CEO Theodore Croft, simply watched with that placid smile that had built his empire, a silent endorsement of his nephew's arrogance. But Julian wasn't finished. Some people are meant to dream, and others are meant to build. We're very good at building. He turned away, the journalists following him like pilot fish, leaving me standing alone with my award. I stood there for 19 seconds. I counted them, letting the humiliation burn itself into my memory, memorizing every smug face, every polite chuckle. Then I set down my untouched champagne and walked away. As I left, I saw him unlock his tablet to review his notes for the next interview. He swiped a simple pattern on the screen. A single, stylized letter J entitled, arrogant, and lazy. He just made his first fatal error. The elevator ride down from the ballroom felt like a descent into a war room. By the time I reached the street, the cold Manhattan air had cleared my head. The anger had cooled, crystallizing into something much more dangerous: clarity. Julian Croft thought he was the face of the company. He was about to learn that the person who designs the foundation is the only one who truly knows how to bring the whole building down. The coffee had gone cold hours ago, but I didn't notice. My laptop screen cast the only light in my apartment as I scrolled through 10 years of project files, system logs, and buried patent applications. Each line of code was a ghost of a contribution they had tried to erase. 2021, the Sky Spire project. I had invented the Oragrid, a dynamic energy network that allowed the skyscraper to generate and redistribute its own power, saving the client 40% on energy costs. The patent was filed under Ethelgard Designs. The Forbes article celebrating the innovation featured a full-page photo of Julian Croft, crediting him for his visionary leadership in sustainable tech. My name appeared nowhere. 2023, the Aqua Viti residential complex. The project was on the verge of collapse due to a critical water shortage. I spent 3 sleepless weeks designing and implementing a closed-loop water recycling system that pulled potable water from the air and recycled every drop of greywater. The system saved the project and won the National Engineering Award. The award announcement praised Julian Croft's unwavering commitment to ecological harmony. I received a standard company-wide bonus, split evenly among 200 employees. But it was the Oasis Tower, tonight's big winner, that had finally broken me. The entire building's climate, lighting, and water systems were managed by my bioadaptive AI, an electronic soul that anticipated the needs of its inhabitants. It was the reason the tower was a living, breathing entity and not just a stack of steel and glass. When the newspapers called, Julian had described the system with a poet's flair and a child's understanding, calling himself the conductor of a grand symphony. He didn't even know how to read the sheet music. I minimized the files and opened a new one. It was time to audit Julian's latest masterpiece, the Helios Pavilion for the upcoming World Expo in Dubai. Last week, he had triumphantly announced that he had personally streamlined the building's operational design to meet an aggressive budget, presenting it as his own brilliant innovation. I knew he'd stolen the early drafts of my Project Chimera from the shared server. Who else had the arrogance and the access? What I didn't know was what he had done to it. That's when I activated Janus. For 3 years, I had been developing this side project, a ghost diagnostic system that could shadow any activity on the network without leaving a digital footprint. It was my insurance policy, running silently in a partitioned corner of the company's servers, a secret I had installed during a late-night system update. The results were immediate and damning. The audit trail showed Julian's access pattern. He'd used his executive credentials to browse protected R&D directories he had no business being in. He had copied my entire Project Chimera folder, then spent a grand total of 45 minutes modifying the architectural plans before rebranding it as the core of the Helios Pavilion. 45 minutes. He'd spent less time understanding my life's work than he had posing for pictures at the gala. I documented every timestamp, every file transfer, but the real evidence wasn't in what he had added. It was in what he had removed. 5 critical systems, the bedrock of the entire design, had been deleted. To someone like Julian, they were just expensive redundancies on a spreadsheet. To an architect, they were the difference between a modern marvel and a modern disaster. The first deletion, the redundant fire suppression sensors. My design had a triple layer system. Julian had ripped out 2 of them, leaving a single point of failure. A single faulty sensor, a single speck of dust, could blind the entire system. The second, the thermal expansion algorithms. These complex calculations allowed the building's smart frame to adapt to the extreme temperature shifts of the Dubai desert, expanding and contracting minutely to prevent stress fractures. Julian had commented them out with a note, unnecessary complexity, over-engineering. The third, the voltage surge isolation units. In my design, each sector of the pavilion was electrically isolated, so a power surge in one area couldn't cascade and black out the entire structure. Julian had removed them to save on wiring costs. The fourth, the secondary water filtration stage. My system used a 2-stage reverse osmosis process to guarantee water purity. He had cut the second stage, gambling that the first would be enough. The fifth, and perhaps most arrogant, the CO2 balancing sensors in the HVAC system. These sensors monitored air quality, ensuring the enclosed pavilion never became stuffy or dangerous. Julian had marked them as luxury overhead, replacing them with a simple timer-based ventilation schedule. Each deletion was a bomb waiting to go off. Each one was signed with his digital signature, time-stamped, and archived by Janus. He had autographed his own incompetence. By dawn, I had compiled everything into an encrypted folder, but I needed more than just evidence. I needed a witness, someone whose credibility was absolute. That's when I thought of Dr. Eris Thorne. Eris and I had served on a sustainable design panel 2 years ago. He was the president of the Global Sustainable Building Council, the GSBC, the kind of man whose word could make or break a billion-dollar project. We had bonded over a shared disdain for greenwashing, the corporate trend of faking eco-friendliness for PR. I called him from a burner phone using an encrypted line. Eliana, it's been too long. How's the corporate world treating you? Eris, I need your help. Professional capacity. His tone shifted instantly. What kind of help? The kind where a flagship pavilion at the World Expo is about to be unveiled with 5 critical, life-threatening design flaws. Silence. Then, how bad? Remember the conversation we had about value engineering safety systems? Imagine that, but on a global stage with a live television audience. Send me what you have. Encrypted channel only. There's more. The person who signed off on these changes is the CEO's nephew. He stole my original design, stripped the safeguards, and is pushing it through as his own cost-saving innovation. Eliana. His voice carried a warning. I have proof of everything, Eris. Digital signatures, access logs, the original designs. I'm not asking you to take my word. I'm asking you to evaluate the technical evidence and act according to your council's mandate. If the GSBC issues a warning, they'll have to halt the launch. And if they don't, I looked at my reflection in the dark screen of my phone. The woman staring back wasn't the eager young architect from 10 years ago. Then at least I'll have done my job. The real one. Protecting people from bad architecture. Send it. I'll review it tonight. If it's as bad as you say, it's worse, Eris. The grand opening is in 5 days, he cursed. Now you understand. Send everything. And Eliana, start backing up your ownership of the original code. If this goes sideways, you'll need to prove you're not the one who broke it. I ended the call and sent the encrypted package. Then came the final phase of my plan. I needed to make sure Julian couldn't claim ignorance. I needed him to personally, explicitly, and indefensibly approve his own destruction. I crafted 5 separate emails, using a spoofed internal address that looked like it came from a junior engineer on the Dubai team. The tone was respectful, almost timid, designed to stroke his ego. The first email highlighted the removal of the fire sensors. Mr. Croft, just seeking clarification on the fire suppression system. Is the single sensor network sufficient for a structure of this size? His reply came in under 10 minutes. Our modeling shows it's perfectly adequate. Redundancy is a relic of outdated design philosophies. Focus on the launch. JC. The second email questioned the thermal expansion algorithms. Sir, I noticed the thermal stress protocols have been commented out. Given the climate, should we reconsider? His reply was even more dismissive. We are building a pavilion, not a spaceship. Stop overthinking the minor details. JC. I sent 3 more, 1 for each fatal flaw. His answers were the same. Arrogant, curt, each one ending with that damning digital signature. Customer experience trumps paranoid engineering. JC. That's what insurance is for, JC. Focus on aesthetics, not doomsday scenarios, JC. He hadn't just approved the vulnerabilities, he had defended them in writing. He had built his own guillotine, and I had just handed him the rope. The launch was in 5 days. He thought he was preparing for a coronation. He was actually walking into a perfectly engineered collapse. The technical documentation sprawled across my dining table like the schematics for a demolition, which, in a way, it was. I'd spent the last 4 days creating 2 versions of a report. One was for Eris and the GSBC, a clinical, brutally technical breakdown of the vulnerabilities. The other was what I privately called Julian's signed confession. Each fatal flaw was documented not just with code, but with language a board of directors could understand, the kind of language that makes insurance underwriters break out in a cold sweat. Fatal error 1, the missing fire suppression sensors. I ran a simulation showing how a small, contained electrical fire in a service closet could go undetected for up to 18 minutes, long enough to fill the main exhibition hall with toxic smoke before a single alarm sounded. In layman's terms, he had removed the smoke detectors to pay for fancier light fixtures. Fatal error 2, the disabled thermal expansion algorithms. I demonstrated how a rapid 40-degree temperature drop, a common occurrence during a desert night, would cause the building's support trusses to contract faster than its glass facade. The resulting stress would create microfractures, invisible at first, but catastrophic over time. He hadn't just ignored gravity, he had invited it to a fistfight with his own building. Fatal error 3, the absent voltage surge isolation. My model showed a tourist plugging in a faulty phone charger could trigger a cascading power failure, blacking out the entire pavilion, including emergency lighting and exit signs, in under 90 seconds. He had gambled a $1 billion project on the quality of a $5 charging cable. Fatal error 4, the eliminated secondary water filtration. This was the simplest to explain. I attached the municipal water quality report from Dubai. Without the second stage of reverse osmosis, the pavilion's drinking fountains would be serving water with trace amounts of industrial contaminants, legally unsafe for human consumption. He was poisoning the guests to save a few $1,000s. Fatal error 5. The deactivated CO2 balancing sensors. This was the most terrifying. My simulation showed that with a maximum capacity crowd, the timer-based ventilation system would be overwhelmed. Within 2 hours, carbon dioxide levels would reach a point that could cause dizziness, disorientation, and panic. He hadn't built a pavilion, he had built a beautiful, airtight tomb. I packaged each vulnerability with proof of concept code, potential exploit scenarios, and conservative damage estimates. The total potential liability was in the hundreds of millions, not including the irreparable damage to the Ethelgard brand. And next to each flaw, I placed a screenshot of Julian's dismissive emails, his arrogant JC signature glowing like a digital scarlet letter. He had approved every single one. Eris called me at 3 a.m. New York time. Eliana, I've had 2 of my best auditors review your findings. We're unanimous. This isn't just negligence, it's reckless endangerment. If they open that building, they could be facing criminal charges. What's the GSBC's position? We're drafting an emergency code red bulletin as we speak. But Eliana, the timing has to be perfect. If we release it too early, Ethelgard will just claim it's a hypothetical flaw in a test build. We need proof they intend to open it to the public as is. The grand opening ceremony is Thursday, 3 p.m. Dubai time. It's being broadcast live. Then we issue the bulletin at 2 p.m. We give them 1 hour to read it and abort the launch. They won't, I said, my voice cold and certain. Julian is moving too fast and his uncle trusts him. They'll see the warning as a bureaucratic delay, maybe even competitor sabotage. Then God help them. Eliana, I have to ask, Eris's voice was serious. Why didn't you just go to Theodore directly? I laughed, but there was no humor in it. 10 years, Eris. 10 years of my name being erased, my work being stolen, my contributions being dismissed as detailing. I was the adorable girl with the unfeasible dreams. They made it clear I was there to support the vision, not to have one. This could destroy them. No, I corrected him. Julian is destroying them. I'm just documenting the collapse. And after, what's your plan? I looked at the offer letter on my desk, an offer I'd been ignoring for weeks. Nexus built, a new firm founded on principles of transparency and creator attribution. A firm co-founded by Dr. Eris Thorne. I'm going to build something better. A place where architects get to sign their own work. I'll see you in Dubai. What? He was planning to be there in person. If you're putting your career on the line, the least I can do is deliver the bad news myself. After we hung up, I organized everything into the final package. The evidence, the emails, the simulations, all of it encrypted, backed up, and ready to be deployed with a single click. Julian thought he was 5 days from becoming a legend. He was actually 5 days from becoming a cautionary tale. I pulled up his corporate headshot. That smug smile, those empty, entitled eyes. He'd called my work a fantasy. In 5 days, the whole world would see what his reality looked like. I closed my laptop, went to bed, and for the first time in a decade, I slept without dreaming of work. Thursday arrived, wrapped in the blistering heat of the Dubai sun. I called in sick, claiming a migraine. No one questioned it. My perfect attendance record had earned me that much. From my apartment in New York, 12,000 kilometers away, I had a better view than anyone in the front row. Janus gave me access to every security camera, every system sensor, every line of code running through the Helios pavilion. At 1 p.m. Dubai time, the VIPs started arriving. Royalty, tech billionaires, architectural critics. The kind of crowd that could make or break a company with a single tweet. At 2 p.m. sharp, I sent the encrypted report to Eris with a simple message. They're going live. Release it. The GSBC code red bulletin went out at exactly 2:01 p.m. Critical structural and life safety vulnerabilities identified in Ethelgard Design's Helios pavilion. The language was clinical and devastating. Immediate public opening is strongly discouraged pending a full third-party safety review. But inside the pavilion, phones were silenced. The presentation was about to begin. The warning might as well have been sent to the moon. Through the main camera feed, I watched Julian take the stage, his Tom Ford suit sharp against the shimmering, futuristic backdrop. The Helios pavilion, he began, his voice echoing slightly, represents a paradigm shift. We've achieved the impossible by eliminating unnecessary redundancies, by streamlining design to its purest, most efficient form. Lies. Every word a lie, wrapped in marketing buzzwords. I opened a terminal window on my second monitor and waited. At 3:08 p.m., Julian gestured to the massive screen behind him. And now, watch as we bring Helios to life. The demonstration began. Lights shifted, water features activated, and the massive, retractable roof began to open to the desert sky. That's when I initiated the sequence. It wasn't a hack. I wasn't a criminal. It was a simple, legitimate data request. I used a public weather API to feed the pavilion's exterior sensors a real-time, but accelerated, weather pattern, a sudden, dramatic drop in temperature, simulating the rapid cooling of the desert at sunset. It was a stress test the system was designed to handle, a system that no longer existed. The first flicker was almost imperceptible, a slight shudder in the massive roof panels. On screen, a tiny, yellow warning icon appeared. Structural stress anomaly. That's just the system calibrating, Julian stammered, his confident smile faltering for the first time. The back end is perfectly stable. One of the expo officials in the front row leaned forward, speaking into his radio. But the cascade had begun. The false stress alarm triggered a minor power surge as the roof's motors fought against a non-existent problem. Without the voltage isolation units, the surge wasn't contained. It hit the main grid. At 3:11 p.m., the lights in the western quadrant of the pavilion flickered and died. Then, the main screen behind Julian went black. A collective gasp went through the audience. The very optimizations Julian had bragged about were now acting as accelerants for the failure. The power outage shut down the primary HVAC units. The backup units, running on the same compromised grid, failed to engage. Without the CO2 sensors to trigger an emergency ventilation response, the air inside the glass dome began to grow thick and heavy. Error messages started flooding my Janus diagnostic screen, a digital wildfire spreading through the pavilion's nervous system. Then, at 3:15 p.m., Dr. Eris Thorne walked through the main entrance. He wasn't alone. He was flanked by two senior officials from the World Expo. He held a tablet in his hand. "Gentlemen, I apologize for the interruption. My name is Dr. Thorne, president of the Global Sustainable Building Council. We issued a code red bulletin 90 minutes ago regarding the system currently failing around you. I need to confirm that Ethelgard Designs received this warning before opening its doors to the public." Theodore Croft's face went from confused to ashen. "What bulletin?" Eris handed him the tablet. As he read, his expression crumpled into something I had never seen on the powerful CEO, pure, undiluted fear. "Mr. Croft," one of the expo officials said, his voice dangerously quiet. "Are you telling us you are demonstrating a pavilion that international regulators have flagged as critically unsafe? We didn't receive it. The bulletin must have." Theodore turned to his nephew. "Julian, did you review the GSBC alerts before this launch?" Julian's mouth opened and closed, but no sound came out. Behind him, the emergency lights began to flicker as the backup power system also failed. Furthermore, Eris continued, his voice cutting through the growing panic, "We have received authenticated documentation showing that Mr. Julian Croft personally approved the removal of 5 critical safety systems, each one flagged as essential for regulatory compliance." He produced a leather portfolio and began handing out printed copies of Julian's emails, his dismissive responses, his JC signature clear as day on every fatal decision. The lead investor, a Saudi prince, was already on his phone, his face a mask of fury. "This demonstration is over." The expo official's voice boomed. "We are evacuating and sealing this pavilion immediately." "Theodore, please," Julian started, his voice a desperate whine. "No, your nephew just demonstrated catastrophic failure in a system he personally compromised. Did you think we wouldn't notice? Did you think we wouldn't verify?" The room erupted into chaos. Julian tried to blame the engineering team, then the software, then me, but the evidence was there, in black and white, passed from hand to hand among the most powerful people in the room. At 3:23 p.m., as the VIPs were being rushed out and expo security began cordoning off the entire area, I closed my laptop. 5 fatal errors, 5 signed approvals, 5 years of stolen credit repaid in 15 minutes of global humiliation. But I wasn't done yet. The real demolition was just beginning. By 4 p.m. Dubai time, the internet was on fire. Someone had leaked the GSBC bulletin to Dezeen, the world's most influential architecture forum. The headline was merciless: Ethelgard's Helios Pavilion, a masterclass in willful negligence. Within an hour, the story had been picked up by Reuters, the BBC, and every major news outlet. The hashtag #HeliosFail was trending globally. But the real bombshell dropped at 5:17 p.m. An anonymous account named Architext appeared on the Dezeen forums and posted a comprehensive analysis titled, "The Architecture of Arrogance: How the Helios Pavilion Betrayed Every Principle of Safe Design." The post included side-by-side comparisons of my original Project Chimera blueprints and Julian's butchered version. It detailed the function of each of the 5 deleted safety systems. And it was illustrated with screenshots of Julian's own emails, his dismissive responses serving as section headers. The post ended with a single, devastating line: "When you steal a blueprint, you should at least know how to read it." My phone began to vibrate uncontrollably. Former colleagues, industry contacts, recruiters, headhunters, everyone wanted to know if I was Architext. I ignored them all, watching instead as the disaster I had engineered unfolded in real time. At 6 p.m., Ethelgard Design's stock, which was publicly traded on the New York Stock Exchange, was halted after plummeting 38% in after-hours trading. Bloomberg picked up the story. Ethelgard's safety scandal raises questions of nepotism and fraud. The company's PR firm, caught completely off guard, released a hastily written statement blaming unforeseen software glitches and promising a full and transparent review. No mention of Julian. No acknowledgement of the stolen design. That's when I received an unexpected email sent directly to my personal address. It was from the Saudi prince who had been the lead investor. "Ms. Sherman," it read, "your analysis on the Dezeen forums was enlightening. My team has been cross-referencing the metadata. Your Aura Grid system has been a benchmark for us for years. If you are ever interested in a conversation about building something real, my door is always open." He knew. Of course, he knew. Men like that don't invest billions without doing their homework. By 8 p.m., 3 more of Ethelgard's major clients had released statements announcing they were reviewing their partnerships. The stock was projected to lose over 50% of its value at the morning bell. Theodore Croft scheduled an emergency board meeting for midnight. I ordered sushi and settled in to watch the continuing coverage. Architectural Twitter had become a feeding frenzy. Memes of the collapsing pavilion were everywhere. Someone had already registered the domain Heliosville.com and redirected it to the Wikipedia page for the Hindenburg disaster. At 10 p.m., Julian made his final fatal error. Panicked and cornered, he went on LinkedIn. He posted a long, rambling screed that blamed a disgruntled former employee for maliciously sabotaging the pavilion's software. He claimed the design flaws were a deliberate act of corporate espionage. The internet's response was swift and merciless. Within minutes, a legion of software engineers and systems architects were dissecting his claims, pointing out that the digital signatures and timestamps on his own emails predated the alleged sabotage by months. He had approved every flaw. He had documented his own incompetence. His attempt to frame me had turned into a globally verified confession. The LinkedIn post was deleted within an hour, but the screenshots were already immortal. Blame the Architect began trending. At 11:37 p.m., my phone rang, an unknown number, New York area code. "Hello, Eliana." Theodore Croft's voice was a ghost of itself. Tired, defeated, "I know it was you." I said nothing. The technical analysis, the timing, the sheer depth of knowledge, it could only have been you. "I don't know what you're talking about. Don't, please, I need to know why." "Why?" The laugh escaped before I could stop it. 10 years, Theodore. 10 years I gave your company. I built the souls of your most famous buildings, and you erased me. You let your nephew take credit for work he couldn't even begin to understand. That's the Ethelgard way. And the Ethelgard way is why you are about to lose everything. Your nephew stole my work, crippled it, and nearly got people killed. I tried to warn him, anonymously, professionally. He dismissed every concern. Those emails, that was his hubris, not my sabotage. Silence stretched across the line. "The board is meeting now," he finally said. "Julian's position is untenable. It's too late for that. What do you want, Eliana? Name it. Money, a promotion, credit. I wanted credit 10 years ago. Now I just want to watch Ethelgard learn what happens when you build on a stolen foundation. This will destroy us." "No, Theodore, Julian destroyed you. I just documented it." I hung up and blocked the number. By midnight, the narrative had solidified. The internet had found its hero and its villain. Brilliant female architect erased by mediocre executive nephew, who then steals and breaks her work, only to be exposed by her just in time to prevent a global disaster. It wrote itself. My LinkedIn profile, which I had updated that morning to Seeking New Opportunities, had 50,000 new followers. Job offers were flooding my inbox. Venture capitalists wanted to fund my next project. But I ignored them all, savoring the beautiful, brutal symmetry of it all. Julian had signed his name to 5 fatal errors. Now the entire world knew exactly what his signature was worth. The invitation came from Architectural Digest via direct message on Twitter. Emergency podcast episode tonight. The Helios fail, a deep dive. We want the architect behind Project Chimera. We can guarantee full anonymity. Eris called me at 7 a.m. its time, Eliana. Their lies are drowning them. Your truth needs a voice. I had spent the night preparing for this moment, but in the quiet hours before dawn, I made a decision. No anonymity, I told the producer. I'll appear as myself. Eliana Sherman, former lead systems architect at Ethelgard Designs. The silence on the other end of the line was telling. Are you sure? I know exactly what this could do. Set it up. The live interview was scheduled for 2 p.m. Eastern, prime time for the American and European markets. As Ethelgard's lawyers scrambled to contain the fallout, I prepared my truth. At noon, they made one last, desperate play. A press release announced a full investigation into potential intellectual property theft and malicious code injection, naming me as a person of interest. They were going to try and sue me for sabotage. I smiled and opened my final folder of evidence, my independent patent applications for the Oragrid, filed before I ever joined their firm, Git commits from my personal laptop showing the original Chimera concepts, predating Julian's access by 2 years. They had just walked into my final trap. At 2 p.m. sharp, I went live. Eliana Sherman, the host began, the architectural world is in shock. As the original architect of Project Chimera, what is your perspective? I took a breath. A decade of silence ended with a single word. Theft. For 45 minutes, I laid out everything. The stolen innovations, the erased contributions, the culture of nepotism that allowed a man with no technical knowledge to overrule an entire engineering department. But here's what matters, I continued, looking directly into the camera. This isn't about one person's ego, it's about a culture that allows this to happen. When you erase the creators, when you promote based on family instead of merit, you don't just hurt individuals. You create Helios pavilions, you create disasters. Ethelgard is claiming you sabotaged the project, the host pressed. I was at home in New York during the demonstration. But let me be crystal clear. I did anonymously report the vulnerabilities to the GSBC, as is my ethical duty. Julian Croft personally approved, in writing, the removal of every single safeguard. I have his emails, his digital signatures, his contempt for safety, all documented. If they want a legal battle, I welcome the discovery process. The live chat exploded. What's next for you? I've accepted a partnership at a new firm, Nexus Built. We're building architectural systems the right way, with transparency, accountability, and absolute attribution. The era of the ghost architect is over. The interview ended at 2:53 p.m. By 3 p.m., Ethelgard's legal threats had vanished. My evidence was spreading across the internet, each timestamp a nail in their coffin. At 4:17 p.m., the board of directors released a new statement. Julian Croft had been terminated, effective immediately. Theodore Croft would be stepping down as CEO. The company admitted to serious lapses in oversight and attribution protocols. But the damage was done. By market close, Ethelgard Designs had lost 62% of its value. That evening, my inbox contained a single, unexpected email chain. It was forwarded from a junior engineer at Ethelgard. The subject was "Thank you." Attached were the resignations of 73 engineers, architects, and designers. The woman who had been dismissed as a dreamer had just orchestrated the most devastating corporate takedown in modern architectural history, not with a hack, but with the truth. Evan thought he was signing his name to innovation. Instead, he'd signed his company's death warrant. And everyone in the industry now knew, when you steal from the architect, you better be prepared for the collapse. 3 weeks later, I stood in the sunlit atrium of Nexus Built's new headquarters in downtown Manhattan, watching the city wake up. The contrast with Ethelgard's sterile marble lobby couldn't have been starker. Here, every blueprint on the wall bore the signatures of its entire design team. An offer had arrived from Ethelgard's new board that morning, $15 million, the CEO position, full retroactive credit for every project, a public apology, everything I had once dreamed of. I fed the entire package into the shredder without a second thought. My assistant knocked. Eliana, your 9 a.m. is here. It was the first group of new hires, 20 of the 73 who had resigned from Ethelgard. We were building a company based on the one thing my old firm had lacked: integrity. Eris walked in, holding 2 cups of coffee. Did you see the news? Ethelgard just lost the federal contract for the new embassy. William Carter's being investigated for securities fraud for not disclosing the flaws before the demo. And Julian, his LinkedIn says he's now a freelance design consultant. We both laughed at the euphemism for unemployable. Later that day, a package arrived with no return address. Inside was a framed photo from the last Ethelgard holiday party. Someone had circled the faces of everyone who had since left. On the back, 2 words were written: "Thank you." That evening, standing before my new team, I held up the shredder's waste basket. This morning, I was offered everything I thought I wanted 10 years ago. I turned it down because what we're building here is worth more. Here, your name matters, your contribution is permanent. That is the Nexus promise. The applause was deafening. My phone buzzed, a text from an unknown number. "Ms. Sherman, this is Julian Croft. I wanted to apologize." I blocked the number without replying. Some foundations are too broken to be repaired. Some errors can't be patched. He had his chance to listen, to learn, to respect the architect. He chose mockery instead. As I drove home, my phone rang again. It was another reporter asking for another interview. Another chance to tell the story of what happens when you underestimate the people who build your world. I had signed my name to 5 fatal errors, not by making them, but by exposing them. And unlike Julian's signatures, mine had built something better. The sun set behind the skyline, a city of 1,000,000 lights, each one a testament to a designer, an engineer, an architect. Somewhere in that city, Ethelgard's empty headquarters stood as a monument to arrogance. And somewhere else, Julian Croft was learning what I had always known. When you mock the architect, you had better be ready for the collapse. My name is Eliana Sherman, and this is just the foundation.